Silence is not emptiness, it is weight, and that weight lingers in ways words never can. When a man stops speaking, it is not merely the absence of sound, it is the absence of fuel. A woman thrives on words, whether sweet or harsh, because words keep her relevant in his world. When he argues, she knows she still matters. When he pleads, she feels desired. When he explains, she sees she still has influence. But silence gives her none of that. It removes the stage, the script, and the spotlight all at once, leaving her with nothing to grip. This is why silence is feared more than anger. Anger can be twisted. She can point to his tone, his volume, his choice of words, and shift blame back to him. She can say, "Look at how you talk to me," and suddenly, the focus is no longer on her mistakes but on his reaction. Silence denies her that shield. There is no tone to critique, no words to manipulate, no outburst to redirect. There is only stillness, and stillness cannot be reshaped into her defense. That stillness forces her inward. For the first time, she has no distraction from her own behavior, no energy to feed off, no reaction to keep her feeling significant. Silence becomes a mirror, quiet, cold, and brutally honest. It forces her to sit with herself, and that solitude begins to press down heavier than any argument could. She may call him distant, cold, or heartless, but deep inside she knows what silence really means. His energy no longer belongs to her. And that realization cuts deeper than any words he could ever say. When a man responds with anger, he reveals something crucial: his emotions are still tied to her influence. His raised voice, his frustration, even his choice of words all signal that she still matters enough to disturb his peace. And for a woman, that is not weakness, it is validation. Anger tells her she still has a place in his emotional world. She may even provoke it deliberately, because every outburst reassures her that she is not forgotten, not irrelevant, not powerless. The louder he becomes, the more she feels in control, because his energy is still orbiting her. Silence, however, delivers a different message, one that strikes far deeper. Silence says, "You no longer affect me." There is no fuel, no reaction, no reassurance that she still has the power to influence his state of mind. That truth is unbearable for someone who thrives on emotional engagement. Arguments can be won, tears can be answered, even distance can be negotiated, but silence cannot be bargained with. It gives her nothing to push against, no way to redirect attention back to herself. What makes silence so powerful is that it leaves her trapped with her conscience. She cannot shift the focus by pointing to his anger or claiming he went too far. There is nothing to weaponize. The absence of words points directly to her own actions, forcing her to confront what she has done without the comfort of blame. In that empty space, regret begins to grow. The quiet becomes louder than any argument, echoing in her thoughts long after he has walked away. And for the first time, she realizes she is no longer fighting him, she is fighting herself. Silence is strength hidden behind calm restraint. Anyone can raise their voice, slam a door, or lash out in the heat of the moment. That takes no discipline, only impulse. But to remain still, to hold back words when provoked, requires control. It is not passivity, it is mastery. Women often mistake silence for indifference, believing a man no longer cares. Yet in reality, silence is composure, the deliberate choice to remove himself from her storm rather than be swallowed by it. That choice communicates something louder than any outburst ever could: he is in command of himself. Anger ties a man to her chaos. The moment he shouts, she knows she still has power over him, because his emotions remain tied to her presence. But silence severs that connection entirely. She may try to push harder, shouting, crying, provoking, but none of it breaches the wall of his stillness. He stands firm, unshaken, and that calm is what unsettles her most. A man who refuses to be moved is a man she cannot manipulate. His silence tells her she no longer commands his reactions, and without reactions, she has no control. That realization shifts the dynamic. While she grows restless and desperate for engagement, he grows stronger in his stillness. His refusal to be drawn into the storm flips the power balance. It is not that he is cold, it is that he is free. And freedom terrifies her more than anger ever could. Because anger keeps him tethered to her, but silence proves he can walk away completely. In that moment, she sees the truth: his strength is not in what he says, but in what he withholds. Silence is not just the absence of words, it is the redirection of energy. When a man chooses silence, he is not retreating out of weakness but reclaiming his focus. Instead of pouring his time and emotions into endless drama, he begins to invest them back into himself, his peace, his purpose, his growth. While she spins in circles, desperate for a reaction, he is building something new, something untouched by her influence. This contrast becomes unbearable for her, because it highlights a reality she cannot ignore: she is no longer the center of his world. Anger keeps him tethered. Even when he rages, his energy is still aimed at her, which means she still matters. Silence breaks that tether completely. It is not rejection in the shallow sense of ignoring her, it is liberation. It says, "My life is no longer revolving around you." And that truth cuts deeper than any insult ever could. Women crave attention, whether through affection or conflict. Silence denies both. It starves the ego, leaving no food for control. This is why silence feels heavier than any argument. It creates distance not just physically, but emotionally. It shows her that while she may try to pull him back into the storm, he has already stepped out of it. She may accuse him of being cold, but deep down she knows he is choosing peace over chaos. That choice speaks volumes. Silence is not avoidance, it is clarity. It is a man showing through stillness that he values his dignity more than her drama. And once she sees that, she realizes she is no longer in command of his attention, his emotions, or his world. Anger is predictable, and because of that, it feels safe to her. She knows its rhythm. It rises, it peaks, and eventually, it cools down. Anger has a beginning and an end, and with that end comes the reassurance that life will return to the familiar cycle. She can expect the apology, the explanations, maybe even the reconciliation. That cycle, though messy, gives her certainty. Silence, on the other hand, offers none. Silence is a void. It has no time frame, no guarantee, no boundaries. She does not know if it will last for an hour, a day, or forever. That uncertainty gnaws at her more than any shouted words ever could. Every unanswered call becomes a question mark. Every unread message feels like rejection. Each passing moment of quiet is a reminder that she no longer has a grip on his emotions. Women crave consistency in connection, even if that consistency comes through conflict. Anger provides it because she knows what to expect from it. Silence removes it completely, leaving her stranded in the unknown. That loss of clarity forces her to sit with her own fear that she may no longer be important to him at all. The silence begins to echo louder the longer it lasts. Doubt creeps in, then worry, then desperation. She replays old conversations in her mind, searching for answers that never come. What unsettles her most is that silence cannot be negotiated. She cannot argue with it, cannot twist it, cannot bend it to her advantage. It stands firm, unyielding, and in that firmness, it delivers the harshest truth: her place in his world is no longer guaranteed. And for her, that realization is far more painful than anger could ever be. Silence reveals truths that anger can never expose. When arguments break out, she always has an escape route. She can claim he raised his voice, she can criticize the words he chose, or she can shift blame by saying he went too far. In anger, she finds protection because the focus drifts from her actions to his reaction. But silence strips all of that away. There are no words to twist, no tone to attack, no volume to use against him. Silence leaves her alone with the reality of what she has done, and that truth cannot be redirected. The stillness becomes a mirror. She looks into it and, for the first time, sees her role in the collapse of peace. She cannot deny the distance, because it is right there in the quiet. She cannot accuse him of cruelty, because cruelty requires words, and he has offered none. What she faces is the reflection of her own behavior, and that is far harder to bear than his anger ever was. Silence forces accountability. It demands she confront what she has avoided. It removes distraction, leaving only her conscience as company. The absence of his voice speaks louder than anything he could have shouted, because silence is impossible to misinterpret. It does not exaggerate, it does not insult, it does not wound, it simply exists as truth. In choosing silence, he is not punishing her, he is preserving himself. He is stepping out of the chaos to protect his peace and his dignity. She may call him distant or cold, but beneath the surface, she knows the truth: silence is not weakness. It is strength, and it commands respect in a way anger never could. Over time, silence begins to work in ways anger never could. At first, she convinces herself it doesn't matter. She tells herself he is just sulking, that he will come back once his mood passes. But as the silence stretches on, doubt begins to creep in. The absence becomes heavier with every passing hour, every unanswered message, every moment without a response. What seemed like indifference at first slowly transforms into an unbearable weight. She replays old conversations in her mind, dissecting every word she said, wondering which moment caused the shift. The longer the quiet lingers, the more her certainty crumbles. Her ego, once so confident, begins to weaken. She sends texts, short at first, then longer, then desperate. When those go unanswered, she changes her strategy. She tries kindness, sympathy, even guilt. Anything to provoke a reaction, anything to pull him back into the orbit where she once had control. But silence dismantles all of it. Unlike anger, which can be met with defense or counterattack, silence provides no entry point. It leaves her stranded, forcing her to realize that her usual methods no longer work. This recognition is devastating, because it shows her that the power she once held has slipped away. Each attempt to reach him is swallowed by the void, and each moment of stillness reminds her that he no longer needs to engage. That shift is where silence becomes most powerful. It turns the tables completely. He is no longer the one chasing, reacting, or proving. She is. The balance of power has moved, and for the first time, she is left fighting for relevance in a world where he has already stepped beyond her reach. The true power of silence lies in what it communicates without effort. Anger lowers a man, pulling him into impulsive reactions that make him appear fragile, unstable, or easy to provoke. When he yells, his emotions are exposed, his composure shattered, and she knows she still holds influence over him. Silence, however, reverses this entirely. It becomes a signal of self-mastery, of a man who has chosen control over chaos. That choice elevates him above the argument, above the drama, and most importantly, above her attempts to manipulate his emotions. Silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It sends a message far more piercing than raised voices: I am not moved by you anymore. That message lingers long after the moment has passed, because silence leaves no closure, no tidy ending for her to cling to. It denies her the comfort of knowing where she stands. Instead, she is left wrestling with uncertainty, while he remains calm and untouchable. In this way, silence exposes her dependence on his reactions. She realizes she cannot operate without his energy, his validation, his engagement. Anger gave her that engagement, even when destructive. Silence robs her of it entirely. And for a woman who thrives on influence, that detachment is devastating. It makes her feel not just ignored but irrelevant. Irrelevance is a deeper wound than rejection, because rejection still acknowledges existence. Irrelevance erases it. Silence tells her she no longer holds space in his emotional world, and that is what unsettles her most. To remain calm while she unravels is to display power in its purest form. His silence shows her what she cannot admit: he no longer needs her, and that truth is unbearable. In the end, silence proves itself not as weakness but as the highest form of strength. It is the discipline to resist when provoked, the choice to hold back energy when chaos demands it. Any man can lash out in anger, it requires no effort to shout, insult, or react. But to remain calm, to withhold words, to let stillness speak in your place, that is mastery. Anger roars for a moment, but silence echoes long after. Its presence lingers in her thoughts, replaying over and over, forcing her to face herself in ways arguments never could. When he chooses silence, he is not abandoning the fight, he is redefining it. Anger gives her something to resist, a wall to push against, a storm to outlast. But silence denies her that battle. It turns her weapons useless, leaving her to wrestle only with her own conscience. This is why silence feels so unforgettable: it does not fade once the shouting stops. It endures, it haunts, and it grows louder the longer it remains. She may try to dismiss it, calling him cold or heartless, but deep inside, she recognizes what it really is: power. Silence is the sound of a man who values his peace more than her chaos, his dignity more than her validation. That realization leaves a mark on her that no angry words ever could. Ultimately, silence becomes a language of its own, a language of worth, control, and strength. It tells her, without saying a word, that he no longer belongs to her storm. And that is why, no matter how much time passes, she will always remember the silence. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is power.